The film begins with a young woman named Iris, lying in bed, visibly burdened by deep emotional pain. The next morning, she drives into a dense jungle and continues until she reaches the top of a towering mountain. Here, we learn the source of her anguish. Iris had a young son who tragically passed away. She blames herself for his death, a grief so overwhelming that it has led her to consider ending her own life. Standing on the edge of the mountain, Iris contemplates jumping. Before she can act, a man named Richard approaches. Observing her state, Richard quickly realizes her intent and tries to intervene. He engages her in conversation, remarking on the beauty of the day and the rare opportunity to experience life's wonders. He encourages her to appreciate the gift of life, arguing that hardships and joys are part of the human experience. Initially resistant, Iris tells him about her son and the guilt she carries. "Because of my carelessness, my son is gone," she confesses. "I can't move past the pain. Maybe it's better to end it all." Richard responds empathetically, saying, "Life is full of ups and downs, but that's what makes it worth living. Every challenge teaches us something. Don't let this sorrow define your story." While he seems to respect her choice, his words begin to resonate with Iris. She steps back from the edge and starts to reconsider her decision. As they walk back toward their cars, the two continue talking. Richard advises her not to let despair drive her actions. Iris appears to take his advice to heart and prepares to leave. However, as she reaches her car, Richard suddenly approaches her with an electric umbrella. Without warning, he stabs her in the stomach, delivering a powerful electric shock that leaves her unconscious. Revealing his true nature, Richard ties up Iris and places her in his car. It becomes clear that he is not the kind-hearted stranger he seemed, but a mentally unstable killer. When Iris regains consciousness, she demands to know where he is taking her. Richard dodges her questions, keeping her distracted while driving. In the meantime, Iris notices her watch and tries to discreetly use it to call her husband. However, Richard quickly catches on and disables her attempt, mocking her efforts. "There's no network here," he sneers. "And I'm not stupid enough to leave you with any chance of escape." Undeterred, Iris finds a small knife in her pocket and begins cutting the rope binding her hands. She keeps Richard distracted by talking to him until she is finally free. In a desperate move, she attacks him, causing the car to veer off the road and crash into a tree. Both sustain injuries in the crash, but Iris seizes the opportunity to fight back. She escapes from the car and cuts the rope around her feet. However, before she can flee, Richard catches up to her. Armed with another weapon, he stabs her again and says, "I knew you'd try something like this. That's why I came prepared. I've given you an injection that will paralyze your entire body," Richard says. "It means your body will stop functioning in a few hours. You only have 20 minutes. You can do whatever you want, run, try to save your life, but the injection's effects will gradually take hold. One by one, each part of your body will stop working. Exactly after 20 minutes, you won't even be able to move a finger. You'll become a living corpse. And your 20 minutes start now." As soon as Iris hears this, she throws the knife and starts running into the jungle. However, she quickly realizes that the more she exerts herself, the faster the injection takes effect. She keeps moving forward, but soon her hands and legs begin to stiffen. Her body starts to betray her, and walking becomes increasingly difficult. Still determined to escape, Iris pushes herself as far as she can. When one of her legs stops functioning completely, she falls to the ground. Unable to walk, she crawls through the forest, desperately trying to put as much distance as possible between herself and Richard. She eventually finds a spot to hide. While Richard searches the area, he momentarily loses track of her. However, as Iris lies in hiding, insects crawl across her face, causing her to scream. Her cry gives away her location. Richard moves toward her, but before he can reach her, Iris drags herself to a nearby river and plunges in. Richard yells after her, "You're making a big mistake. You won't be able to swim in your condition." But Iris, even though barely able to move, manages to float downstream and eventually drags herself onto the riverbank. Exhausted, she collapses. By now, the 20 minutes are up. Iris is completely paralyzed, unable to move anything except her eyes. She lies helplessly where she fell. After some time, an old man cutting grass nearby notices Iris lying motionless. He approaches her and asks, "What happened to you?" Iris cannot speak or move, but manages to blink her eyes. The old man realizes she is in trouble and communicates with her, blink once for yes, twice for no. Iris blinks once. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the old man says, "Wait here. I'll bring something to help." He returns with a wooden stick, uses it to lift Iris, and carries her into his house. Moments later, there's a knock at the door. Iris, lying on a makeshift bed, desperately blinks, trying to warn the old man. Sensing danger, the old man cautiously answers the door. Standing there is Richard, looking disheveled and feigning distress. "Please help me," Richard pleads. "I'm in terrible pain, and I need assistance." He stumbles inside, pretending to cry. The old man, unaware of Richard's true intentions, asks, "What happened? Tell me." "My son died recently," Richard begins, sobbing. "The shock has affected my wife's mental health. We were in the jungle when she suddenly disappeared. I've been searching for her everywhere and thought she might have come this way." The old man, sympathetic, says, "Why don't you call her?" Richard replies, "My phone is lost." Meanwhile, the old man has hidden Iris behind the sofa, just out of Richard's view. Richard, unaware, sits in the living room, continuing his emotional manipulation. "I love my wife dearly," he says, tears streaming down his face. "If I don't find her soon, she could die." The old man begins to believe Richard's story. But before he can respond, a phone starts ringing. It's Richard's. Seeing the phone ringing, the old man grows suspicious. Richard had claimed earlier that his phone was missing. The old man decides to call the police for help. As he begins dialing, Richard suddenly attacks him, causing the phone to fall to the ground. Though old, the man is surprisingly strong. He manages to wrestle with Richard and overpower him briefly, delivering a few solid blows. But during the scuffle, Richard grabs a knife lying nearby and stabs the old man in the leg. Writhing in pain, the old man collapses to the floor. Richard then plunges the knife into the old man's stomach, killing him. After disposing of the old man, Richard steps out of the house and returns with petrol. His plan is to burn the house down and destroy all evidence. He pours petrol around the house and sets it on fire. Flames quickly engulf the house. As the fire spreads, a curtain by the window moves, catching Richard's attention. Suspicious, he re-enters the burning house and discovers Iris still inside. He carries her out and throws her into his truck, then drives away. Iris, still weak and partially paralyzed, desperately tries to free herself. She fiddles with the seatbelt but lacks the strength to undo it. While she's trapped in the truck, a little boy passes by. Seeing the boy reminds Iris of her own son, and she's overcome with memories of their time together. But before she can react further, the boy's mother arrives and takes him away. Richard soon returns, gets into the truck, and resumes driving. He stops briefly to repair his car, taking another injection from his car and placing it in the truck to paralyze Iris again if necessary. While he's busy fixing the car, a police officer arrives. The officer notices Iris in the truck and begins questioning Richard. "This car has been reported," the officer says. Richard quickly fabricates a story. "Oh, sir, this car belongs to my friend. My wife was driving while drunk, and she crashed it into a tree. That's why the car's in this state. I've left her in the truck for safety while I repair the car to return it to my friend." The officer grows more suspicious and asks to speak with Richard's wife. Richard hesitates, but rolls down the truck window slightly. The officer sees Iris inside and notices the injection lying nearby. Before the officer can act, Richard launches a violent attack. Richard kills the officer, then places the body in his car. He pours petrol over the vehicle and sets it ablaze, destroying any evidence. Once again, he takes the truck and drives away with Iris. Meanwhile, the effects of the paralysis injection on Iris begin to wear off. She slowly regains her ability to speak. Gathering her courage, she speaks to Richard, trying to reason with him. "I know you have a wife and daughter, and I know you love them deeply. There's still time to make things right. I promise I won't tell anyone about this. Just leave me on the side of the road and go back to your family. They're coming to see you. Spend time with them, they're the most important thing in your life." Iris's words are an attempt to appeal to Richard's emotions. But instead of being moved, Richard drives to the edge of a lake, announcing, "This is our last stop." Summoning her remaining strength, Iris grabs the injection Richard had brought earlier. She attempts to use it on him, but her weakened state prevents her from applying the necessary force. Nothing happened to Richard, he survived the attack. He pulls the knife out of himself and mockingly says to Iris, "You're a loser. You can't do anything." Poor Iris begins to cry, pleading, "Please let me go. My husband must be looking for me." Richard coldly replies, "Never. I'm not going to spare your life." He drags Iris to the side of the river, puts her into a boat, and begins rowing to the middle of the water. His plan was clear: to drown Iris and kill her. As they move further into the river, Iris notices a knife behind Richard. She quickly thinks of a plan and says, "There's a picture of my son in my back pocket. I want to see it one last time before I die. Please, take it out and give it to me." Richard, unsuspecting, leans over to search for the picture. Taking advantage of the moment, Iris grabs the knife and stabs him in the face. Startled, Richard pulls back, and Iris starts rocking the boat violently. Losing his balance, Richard falls into the water, and his gun lands on the boat. As Richard tries to climb back onto the boat, Iris seizes the gun and fires several shots at him. Injured, Richard falls back into the water. Iris believes the ordeal is finally over and that she is safe. However, her relief is short-lived. The bullets have caused holes in the boat, and water starts pouring in. The boat begins sinking rapidly, pulling Iris underwater. Fighting for her life, she struggles to swim and eventually surfaces. Gasping for air, she sits on the riverbank, overwhelmed with relief. She couldn't believe she had survived and escaped from the clutches of a killer. Just as she begins to calm down, she notices movement in the water. Richard resurfaces. He is in terrible condition from the gunshots and begs for help. Iris is faced with a choice: she could call for an ambulance and save his life, or she could leave him to his fate. Remembering all the pain and torment Richard had caused her, Iris decides to walk away. She leaves him in his suffering and departs. And with that, the story of the film comes to an end.